Okay. All right. So I'm here with Steve. We're gonna have some discussion here on the philosophy, maybe some theory as well about character creation and role playing for our Always Level One playlist. So, Steve, this is the first time you and I have chatted or not in person, but online for this
Right.
purpose of talking about D&D. We play Friday nights in person. We have a 1E game that we play together in, and from time to time I reach out to players to see if they're interested in having just a frank conversation, a one-on-one conversation, or sometimes one-on-two, about whatever topic that they desire to talk about that's role-playing or D&D related. So, and here we are. So let me turn it over to you, Steve, and ask you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and what we're going to talk about tonight.
Sure. That's great. Thanks for having me, Keith. My name is Steve Captain. I'm a pastor at a local church in Ashland, Virginia. And before that, I served as a missionary in Malaysia and Nepal for many, many years. And then many years back, I played D&D as a kid. Stopped for a while, just got back into it. I wish while I was out on the field we had some of the technology that we have today because I've met people from all over the world that play. We probably would have played online if we'd had the chance to get together that way. That'd have just been nice to have that. I don't know. It's nice to have a break, right? Break from the grind and just kind of do something. I would say something you can shut your mind off for, but you don't with D&D, do you? But you,
Well, no, but you shut your mind off to the real world. So
yes,
it is
yes,
well, it certainly it is. I don't see how it can't be. It is an escape from reality, right? Of course, you
yeah,
might have things around you if you're playing in a public space that could distract you, but it's an escape from reality, and then it's what you make of that. The degree of the escape varies based upon how you role play. The character you play, how much of you do you put into that character, right? And that's
mm,
kind of I think what we're going to be getting into tonight here in a few
right,
minutes. But all right,
yeah. So it's cool.
all
Jumped
right,
back in after so many years and excited to do so. So yeah,
so I agree. Technology would, so back when I first started playing in the '80s, we didn't have this technology, right? The internet didn't. I don't want to say it didn't exist, but for all intents and purposes, it didn't exist, right? Certainly not what we know it to be today. There was no video call, there was no web browsers, there was none of that. There was no masses of data to access, look up a PDF, and so on. That didn't exist, so you couldn't play online. Couldn't play D&D online. Some people actually played by mail, which would now be equivalent to playing by text.
interesting.
Okay, but everyone played in person. So you just found some local people, usually your friends or your family. You sat down and you played some D&D. Now with technology, we can be, as you said, we can be anywhere in the world and still play with anyone in the world. So
Right.
case in point with that, I run a game on here on Discord on Sundays, and I have a lady in San Diego, one in Albany, one in Orlando, and I had one out in Utah somewhere.
Mm.
So all over the country, and we all came together to play at the same time. On Tuesday, I have a guy in Chicago. I had a lady in Iowa, another one in Iowa, another one here, a couple actually locally here for me. But yeah, so from all over, and I'd be receptive to anyone in the world. That doesn't matter to me. But then you get into time zones, and that can be challenging and stuff.
Right.
So, but anyway, I digress. All right, so Steve, tell me if you would, 30 seconds so people can understand where you're coming from. What
Okay.
is your role-playing background?
Well, I it used to be extensive back when before I was 15, as much as it could be for a young kid. But me and my friends, we were immersed and we were totally into it. And then high school kicks in and things get busy and we kind of drifted off in different directions. And then I just played from time to time, but never had a group that I was dedicated to. So yeah, so like I said, just recently within the last, believe it or not, it's been several months, right?
So what kind of refueled your interest, or what resparked that interest?
Um, Honestly, I mean, we're new to the area. My family and I just new with the church, and I needed to get out of the bubble, get out of the shell, and meet some people. So, um, I'm somewhat introverted, maybe an ambivert, right in the middle. But I remember I'm like, I found you online. I'm like, I'm just gonna go and check these guys out. And I remember I went and I stood right by the table, and I'm like, oh, I need to introduce myself, but I was late and you guys are playing, and I didn't know what to do, so I just stood there like the awkward introvert that I am until you turned to me and said, "Can I help you?" And I felt like I was like 10 years old. Can I play with you guys? You know, you're like, sure, pull up a chair. And then from there it was fine. So,
Okay.
and I found, even though I'm busy and sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm tired. It beats channel flipping, right? Alone any day. And there are other things to do. You know, you can go to the bar, but it's so loud you don't really get to talk or really get to know people. So that was kind of the motivation.
Okay. So you have chosen, as I mentioned, for always level one, I reach out to players periodically. I try to do something about once a month, but I reach out to players and say, what would you like to talk about? And you came up with a few bullet points, but you titled them, if you will, role playing, identity, and true self. And you have half a dozen bullet points here, which you're going to try to get to. We'll see. But the first two, and I may go out of order here to kind of get us started, and the conversation is going to be here led by you, but I will kind of guide or interject based upon what your bullet points here. But first bullet point you have that I like to start with is why people play characters unlike themselves. Now, of course,
Mm.
I'm going to ask you to clarify that. Are we talking about the character race and class? Or are we talking about the character's persona, the character's personality, their personality traits, their behaviors, their strengths, their weaknesses, their faults, their weaknesses, their strengths? What are you really referring to there?
Probably all of it in a way, but initially I was thinking of alignment, right?
Okay, okay.
How we kind of like to just um, play. I like that now to play differently from myself. I'm reflecting on my middle school years, and I always wanted to play lawful good. And as I reflect on that, I think it was more what I wish I was than what I actually was. Because reading fantasy books and everything else, not that they're all lawful good, but you know, I want to be the hero. I want to fight for justice. I want to rescue people. I want to do all these things. And in reality, in the real world, it's kind of shy and kind of not that way, right? So I wanted to do that. And I mean, I have a memory, a couple of great memories. Dungeon master friend of mine, he wanted me to play like a, I don't know, lawful evil or chaotic evil assassin or something like that. And I was horrified. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm good, right? But now I would relish that opportunity.
So I will say that though, and again, this is when you're 15. So that ties into our own personal maturity and our maturity as a player to be able to
Mm,
differentiate ourselves from the character that we're playing, right? Because
right.
oftentimes we see inexperienced players, and I keep using the word mature, immature, but inexperienced players. Maybe that's a better choice of words, experience and inexperience. But inexperienced players playing their character very close to themselves because that's the easiest thing to do because they know themselves, right? It's easy for
Right.
them to just be them. But to step out of that box and role play something different, especially very contrary to you, for many people that's extremely difficult for an inexperienced player, right? Like we were talking about
It
this the
is.
other night, right? You said, "Hey man, I think I might want to play a evil assassin." I said, geez, Steve, I like the idea. I don't object to it, but you have to have the right group to play that with, right? And that ties into player experience, player maturity. So I agree with you that sometimes people play characters completely opposite themselves, right? And that kind of ties into what we introduced to us or introduced the video as like a part of
Hmm.
escapism, right? I can be someone I'm not. I can be the superhero, right? I'm the average Joe. I'm a little shy, but here I can be the superhero. I can be the one who saves the damsel in distress. Whereas me myself, maybe I would never do that. I'd be
You
too
can
shy
talk to that damsel.
or physically weak, or you can talk to that damsel in distress because it's not real, right? So it's a certain
Yeah.
level of escapism. Um, and I think some people, as they progress in their role play, they do just that. They progress, right, and they start shifting away from playing themselves and start playing into actually a different, someone different. But I will say, it's a social role playing game, right? So if you're gun shy, you're shy to begin with, you're introverted, you can choose or decide to play the character that's completely opposite you, but you still need to speak up and role play that. And
Right.
for some people, and especially in a in-person setting, that can be difficult for some.
It is. And yet, if you're with a group of friends, or even if you're not, like there's strangers, former strangers, right, that have come to us on Friday, and it has been fun for me, just the way I look at people from that pastor's perspective, but I also minored in family therapy, so a little bit of psychology in there, just watching people develop and get past that and grow in their comfortability. And I realize it's not always this way, but it's almost like, especially for some of the younger players, they're growing socially outside the game, and then inside the game, they're taking more risks, being willing to step into certain roles. I'm seeing that a little bit. I'm making it sound like there's this vast growth taking place. It's small steps. Then there are guys like the other Steve that we play with, if you don't mind me using his name, but he's so good at stepping into the role, and he does something that I'm like, why'd you do that? He's like, that's totally what my character would do. And so I love watching him play because he's looking at the situation and he's not thinking this is the smartest move or this is the wisest move. He's approaching it from the perspective, this is totally what my character would do. He would say, dang it all, throw everything down and charge in with this sword, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, Steve. And that again is player experience, right? And being able to actually role play a role, right? It's not
Right.
we're not acting. We don't have a script. We don't have lines, right? It's role playing, or some might call it improv. Well, there's a fine line, I think, between role playing and improv.
Right.
Well, maybe not a fine line, but there's a line between that. Okay, and that comes down to an experienced player. An experienced player
Hmm.
who's at least decent, right? If you're at least a decent experienced player, you can do those kind of things. Like, well, my character would do that. And I see that particularly on, I got a couple players here throughout my games, and I see that on Tuesday night, one of my online games, they were at camp. And they had watches. A couple guys stay up for a couple hours and tap out, and so everyone can kind of get their rest, right? Pretty kind of standard procedure, so to speak, in D&D when you're making camp overnight. And on one of the watches, they heard something. Bad guys coming. So melee ensued. They wake everyone up. Well, the one player says, "Well, my character would have taken off their armor to sleep. So she's in her underoos, grabbing her shield and her mace, and running into combat with essentially
Yeah.
nothing. It's all I got. All I
Right.
have is a shield. I'm half naked, but that's what
Armor class 9 or 8.
right. So that's what realistically would have happened if this was reality.
Hmm.
That's probably what would have happened. So he role played it in such a way, whereas an inexperienced player might say, "Oh, no, 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 I wouldn't have done that. I would have kept all my stuff on, absolutely no, and I would have put it all on first, and then I would have
Yeah.
gone into battle." Just because they're too afraid to take that risk, and they don't understand the role playing aspect in as well. It's fantasy, it's fake. There's a certain level of reality to it, right? Within the realm
Hmm.
of that. Um, if you have anything else, Steve, expand on that a little more for me, though, about why you think people will play characters like themselves. You said sometimes, um, I'm sorry, unlike themselves. You said unlike themselves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Unlike
right,
themselves.
because there's a lot of reasons that can be. And
Hmm.
you yourself, when you mentioned when you were a kid, you played more like yourself, but wanting to be unlike yourself. And now you're saying you'd relish that opportunity. So why do you think as a 15-year-old, it was a struggle for you to play a character unlike yourself?
I think it's part of getting to know who I really am. Um, this brings up another story. I think Dungeon Master. I mean, he was my age, smart guy. He challenged me and he said, well, why do you always want to play lawful good characters? I said because that's more true to who I am. He said, no, you're more like a chaotic good person. And I was like, what is he talking about? I don't know why that stuck with me. I have reflected on it over the years for whatever reason, even when I wasn't playing D&D, and I was like, dang it, he's right, you know, because I believe in good. I want to do the right thing and I want to be good at all this other stuff, but rules for rules sake, oh man, just burn it down, burn all that down, right? Um, so I remember being young, even if I was playing a lawful good character, gave me an opportunity to experiment with pieces of myself that I didn't necessarily know real well, right? Got to experiment with my own individuation. That's the word. Who am I really? What's going to work? What's not going to work in this setting that's not real? That's in a sense not in the video way, but a virtual reality, and where there are consequences for your actions. And so you start to learn maybe what works, what doesn't work. If you have a good dungeon master that's working with you with that.
So then let me flip that, and
Hmm.
I'm asking you against you because I know I said it, I'm going to let you kind of lead everything, and yet I
No,
tend to
it's
talk
fine.
a lot too. So,
That helps.
um, okay, so that's why you think people play characters unlike themselves.
I,
Um,
I think I think it's something I think it's something that just happens, right? They just do it, and I'm guessing that maybe that's what's going on.
okay, so you're suggesting that someone who rolls up their or I don't know, creates their character, their race, their class, right? And when we actually come to gameplay, they kind of organically stop playing the character unlike themselves.
Yeah, perhaps. And sometimes I think when you're older, you're kind of aware of it. You're kind of scratching a psychological itch, but you're like, you know what? I'm playing this character this way. I'm gonna try something out. I'm gonna do something I don't normally do. It can be, I'm not saying it always is, but it's like acting, right? Where if you're really gonna role play it well, you need to bring something out from inside yourself to the table, so to speak, and role play with a piece of yourself that maybe you're not always in touch with or you don't get a chance to explore or exercise as much.
So speaking for myself, when I create a character, I will usually within the first week or two of playing that character, if not fully upon character creation. At that time, I will decide how I want to play that character. If I want to play them as the shy, quiet one, as the one who lies all the time, the one who's a jerk, the one who's the do-gooder, and always helps out the damsel in distress or the lost child, whatever it may be. I decide that ahead of time, and then I role play that. I generally don't let my role play organically happen, and then that defines the character. Um, Sometimes I'll do that with regards to alignment, not kind of really locking myself into a particular alignment, but in terms of personality and like personality traits and behaviors, that I generally choose ahead of time. So I think that at least in the older editions, most people don't do that, right? They just create their character sheet and they say, okay, let's play, and have no preconceived notion of what their character,
Not
who
even
that
sure what alignment means,
right,
even.
and who that character really is in terms of their personality, right? Now, in later
Hmm.
editions, I've seen players do it. They'll roll every freaking thing, and they'll roll all these personality descriptions and strengths and weaknesses and faults and addictions and all this stuff before they even set play. And in essence, they let the dice determine how they're going to play their character. And I personally, I don't like that as a player. I don't really support that as a DM. Let the dice determine maybe the racing class that you have, or how physically strong you are, how physically or how intellectual the character is. But in terms of the actual role play, I think the player should choose that and not dice or some preconceived notion.
Mm. I think that can
Right.
kind of, I don't know why my mind went here. It's like an actor using AI to generate their backstory as opposed to, um, as an artist, really creating it
Mm-hmm.
myself. I don't know how much art comes into role playing in D&D, but I can guess there's got to be some.
Well,
And it is an art to
right,
play it
in terms
well.
of creativity, right? And my daughter tells me that from time to time when I'm creating content, right? I'm doing just that. It's creation. It's mental, free thinking, artistic creation. To obviously varying degrees and extents and stuff, but yeah. So I agree with that. What I see happen sometimes with the less experienced players is if they roll all that stuff to tell them how to play, that might be too difficult for them to role play. Hey, my character has a drinking problem, but he's supposed to be a good, honest guy. On Sundays, but every other day of the week, he's a bad guy, and he curses a lot, and that player never does. And this and that, and it really locks them in, and that might be difficult for them to role play that character that way as an
Mm,
inexperienced role player. And that's one of the reasons why I don't really support that. Um, Again, unless you're an experienced player. But again, if you're an experienced player, you're going to choose how you want to play that character, and you can role play that, right? And you can differentiate that from yourself. But all right, so on the flip side, before we move on to the next bullet point here, why do you think people play characters just like themselves?
well, we kind of discussed in a way, it's easy. It's our default, right? Um, Not really ready to branch out. We don't know ourselves well enough. Again, it's a psychological thing. I think of Carl Jung, our shadow self. Right? We're not really willing to reach deep inside and explore the darker pieces of ourselves and bring that to conscious awareness, let alone to the D&D table and play that. So it's a lot easier to just say, I'm going to kind of play this the way I am every day. That's
So,
kind of an intuitive guess.
all right, so with that said, how do you think I suppose on a personal level, role playing reveals our own fears, our desires, our values, our beliefs?
Yes. This happened a lot when I was young. I was less willing to explore outside of a very narrow view of who I was. But as I bumped into different things within the game, I had to consider. It could be from, we have a prisoner, we can't take him with us. Okay, someone's like, okay, kill him. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. We don't want to kill him. Let's bring him with us. And who's going to feed him? And who's going to do all these different things to where you're kind of like, gosh, okay, kill him. You know? um, and then um, it's just a game, so it's not that big a deal. But then for me, sometimes I'll overthink things. I'm like, well, what are the moral implications of that?
Well, yeah,
And
but
other
but
things.
but I'll challenge you on that, Steve, to say at that point, are you really separating yourself from your character, right? Are you really role playing versus playing yourself? Because
Yeah.
I don't think either one of us, and probably nearly everyone who might be watching this, all five people would say, yeah, just kill him. No, like at that point it really is a for most of us it's not a moral conundrum, right? It's pretty
No.
obvious that we wouldn't kill him just because he's going to be a burden, right? Maybe leave him behind, but not to just kill him, right? But in the game, right, because it's a game and there's no real
Right.
life consequences, there may be consequences in game, but you know what happens? It doesn't matter in real life because when the clock hits 10:30, we pack up, we go home,
Yep.
right? And then we come back next week at 7 o'clock or whatever, and we start again. And then we stop at 10:30. So it doesn't really matter. Like in the grand scheme of things of life, it doesn't matter. It's a game. It's make believe. So and I'm questioning on this because I'm not really sure what you're driving at, or how you think that role playing reveals our own personal fears and desires. Because if we're truly role playing, then I'm role playing that character, what they believe, right? What their values are, not necessarily mine. And my values are
Right.
not always going to be reflected or projected onto my character. As you said, sometimes it's quite the opposite, right? Because we want to play someone who's not like us, further deepening our escape from reality for just 3 hours a week, right? To
Yeah.
indulge in the
Yeah.
game. So, what were your thoughts when you put that bullet point there on our text that role play reveals fears, desires, and values?
I think what I was thinking is as you just go through the game and you're doing certain things, I guess it depends on how you play. And again, I am thinking back to when I was in middle school. I was very reflective and thought about everything I was doing. And then some guys, I think they just shut it off, total escape from reality, and let's go, hack and slash, have fun. Not that there were necessarily any moral dilemmas, but in terms of desires, I don't know. It can reveal some things about, just like any fantasy can reveal your desires. How much do I really want adventure? How much do I want success? I think we all want these things. But when you're 13 to 15 and you're playing these games for the first time, um, kind of did for me, but these things kind of come to the surface, and you're maybe when you're not playing, thinking of them for the first time. I probably thought about it a lot because I was so bored in school. So what would I do when they're sitting there talking about math and my brain drifts? Well, I was probably thinking about D&D, about some
So,
of these things.
do you
Now
think
I don't.
that is a personal maturity level as compared to a player maturity level? Because obviously you and I have a few years on us. We're not 15 anymore, right?
Yeah,
But
right,
we could still have someone walking into our game who's our age and have zero experience in role playing, right? So they're coming in as a mature person, but an immature player. So
right.
they still will have obviously their personal values and beliefs are well developed at this point at 30, 40, 50 years old, right? But they may not know how to role play.
Right.
So I think there is a difference between our personal maturity, i.e., age, and our
Hmm.
player maturity, i.e., experience with the game.
Sure.
Those both influence how we play, but those are not synonymous with each other. Because you can have a young player who's experienced, right?
Right.
So
That's true.
maybe they can role play. They know how to like role play in the game, but they may still struggle to separate themselves from the character, right? They know how to
Hmm.
role play in the game, but can't create a character unlike them.
Right.
And I think at those times when you can't separate, that's when, since you're projecting yourself into that character, is when we see more of who that person really is, right? Their values, their beliefs that we're talking about. Um, because they're playing that character as themselves, but they also know it's fantasy, it's make believe, it's a game, so they're willing to take those risks and they're willing to show maybe some of their dark colors that they wouldn't otherwise show, right?
Right. Right. That's exactly what I'm getting at. You're showing these dark colors. You're getting in touch with your shadow self, perhaps a bit. It'd be interesting. I don't know, because like you said, at 10:30 we pack up and go home. When we were in middle school, we would play all night long, all summer long. And so I'm not sure if there was any shutting off that was going on. I don't know what our parents were thinking, but yeah, getting in touch with that, you shut it off and you go on. I'm not sure how much reflection about it is happening afterwards, if at all. At the end of the day, it's just fun. And I think it is fun to get in touch with and express those parts of ourselves that maybe normally we wouldn't. I'm not talking about something unhealthy or something decadent or anything like that. But, when I was playing a thief in the game, it was kind of fun to consider, oh, I'm going to steal something from someone. What is that like? How good am I at this? Well, I don't know. Let's roll the die and find out. Oh my gosh, we're going to bring chance into this and I might get caught. Here's where it did kind of connect up. It just happened right now. I remember even in middle school, and it's a normal part of adolescence, where we do kind of try on different identities in the real world, not just in D&D, but in the real world. And I remember me and a group of friends, we decided we were going to steal something from 7-Eleven just for the heck of it, not because we really needed it, just to see if we could get away with
For
it.
the thrill of it, yeah.
Yeah, I think the first time we got away with it, second time we got caught, and this guy's, I'm going to call your parents. Like, oh my gosh. You know? So, I don't know how that lines up with D&D and getting to know yourself and experimenting with different
Well, I think
identities.
there, though, what I'm hearing, though, is that at a certain age, or developmental age, right, when you're a teenager, or some kids now playing preteen even, but so if you're preteen or teen, and your morals and your values, while psychologists might say they were set by age 3, we're still really learning them, and I think we're still kind of
Yeah.
developing them, right? And our personalities developing. You're saying you try on different things, yeah, because you're growing up. I want to fit in with this group. I want to fit in with that group. I don't want that group anymore. So we're really learning who we are. But by the time we're into our 20s and we have real, grown up jobs and stuff, and we're in
Mhm.
society, at that point we're adulthood. So all that should be kind of cleared out or smoothed out, right? So
Theoretically.
then at that point, yeah, theoretically. So then at that point, when we're role playing, we may not be quite as experimental as we were when we were, 14, 15. Not so much experimental, but then you didn't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. So you
Right. I
didn't
think it's
you
clear when you're older that this is a game. Well, not a game, but this is a role.
right.
This is not who I am. I would never do this in the real world.
Right, exactly, because our values are better developed, our morals are
Yeah.
solidified, right? Our beliefs. And when you're younger and you're more willing to challenge authority and test the limits of life, right, than we are as adults because we've already learned that. Um, yeah, so as a 15-year-old, you play very differently than when you're a 35-year-old, right?
Hmm.
So, kind of tying all that in together, I agree that even though I'm role playing that character, unless they deviate greatly from me, some of me still might be projected in that because, I'm a
Yeah.
dad, I have children, I have a wife, I have a brother and a sister. So if something happens in the game, while my character's already been defined, a little bit might kind of blur over as to that
Sure. Yeah,
character's
absolutely.
belief. Unless it's completely contrary. Like if it's 100% opposite, like you said, if I'm playing a chaotic evil character who doesn't give a shit about anything except himself, life has no value unless it's going to get me coins, you know, then at that point, when you have that much of a stark contrast in the character versus the player, I don't think you'll see as much. But when you're kind of in that middle area, right? Because what we're saying now is we're past the stage of the character is me, right? We're past that
Hmm.
because the player has matured, the person is a little matured, or at least the person has. Maybe the player has too. So we're past that, right? So the character is not necessarily just me, but the character is not completely opposite. Like you said, hey man, I would love to play a chaotic evil assassin. Well, that's completely opposite, really anyone, um,
Right.
except maybe the serial killer or something, right? So if you're not on those extremes and you're here in the middle, I think that I don't want to say always, but there's a strong possibility a little bit of you might bleed over into that character.
Mm.
Maybe either directly in the defined character or just the undefined in terms of how you actually play those traits of that character. Even though those personality traits may not be in complete alignment with you as the person, some of that might bleed over into how you actually role play that.
Yeah, I was thinking even how you react while you're playing it. Watching some players like they do something and they just laugh spontaneously. I would never do that in real life.
Right. So
Stab someone in the back or whatever. I don't
Um,
know.
one quick, I'll get on a soapbox here for 30 seconds. One thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way, both as a player, but especially as a DM, when a player, usually those with less experience, say, "Oh, well, that's what my character would do," and they use that as a justification for like everything. Okay,
Mm.
first of all, no, that's wrong. In essence, to play the game like that, to justify your actions just because, kind of thing. But that tells me two things as the DM. You don't know how to role play, and you haven't developed that character. Either you
Mm.
haven't developed it through actual role playing, or you haven't sat down and said, "Hey, my character is a really nice guy. He's very soft spoken, and he, gives charitably to the church." Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But you haven't defined that, so therefore you're loosey goosey, and you just say, "Oh, that's what
Mm.
my character would do," to justify you doing something that your character has never displayed before, and because you haven't really defined that character. That's my
Yeah,
30-second soapbox.
yeah, that works. And really, even working through the alignment of your character, right? Like my current character's lawful neutral. Believe it or not, I think about that a lot. I'm like, what does that mean to be lawful neutral? Okay, but the lawful part, well, neutral's neutral, I guess. The lawful part, ironically, is not completely opposite of me. I obey the law, but for a lawful neutral character, if I understand that correctly, they're concerned with order, the law, following things the right way, but not necessarily whether it's good or bad. Just this is the right way. This is the way you do things. So, um, that's not me, but I'm learning about what that means to be that, but also because it's different from me, I learn more about myself. Am I making sense with that?
I think
Because
so.
I'm
I think so.
I'm differentiated from that. So I'm like, huh, that's interesting. That's definitely not who I am. I don't give a rip, you know. But I need to play the guy this way. That hey, guys, this is not how we do things. There's an order. There's a right way to do it. And I don't know if I'm role playing it well, but I do have it in mind.
Right, right. Oh, shit. Um, so in terms of alignment, let's since you brought that up, and that was one of your bullet points, I want to scratch that surface a little bit. So we're speaking for Dungeons and Dragons. Other game systems might have an alignment system that's different, or no alignment system at all. But there are different alignments in Dungeons and Dragons. Through all the various editions, I don't think they've changed. I believe they remain the same. And they are, and I'm going from memory now, there is lawful evil, lawful good, lawful neutral. There are nine. Chaotic good, chaotic evil, chaotic neutral. There's neutral good, neutral evil, and true neutral.
Mm.
I believe those are the nine. I'm going to see if I can pull it up here to show on the video and to share with you. But um, now, myself, as the DM at least, upon character creation with my players, most of which who are less experienced or even new to the game altogether. Some players are not new to D&D but new to first edition, which is what we play. Um, I tell them don't pick an alignment upon character
Mm.
creation. We create your
Right.
race, your class, we get you all geared up, right? And if you want to come up with a little bit of character background or a story where they came from, that's fine. If you want to talk a little bit about your character, their personality, right, which is what we're talking about, the role play aspect, their likes, their dislikes, their behaviors, their addictions, their vices, that's fine, that's great, it'll help you role play the character. But role play the character, because you can have all these great characteristics and still be of evil in nature.
Hmm.
So, and vice versa, right? You can flip that and say, man, this guy's a jerk all around, no matter which angle you come at it. But he's a really good guy. Like he has good values. He just comes, he talks harsh and is mean to people, but he's still deep inside. He's a good person. Good people can do bad things. Bad people can do good things. Kind of concept. So
Hmm.
I tell them don't choose an alignment. Wait for a handful of sessions and then see which alignment seems to best suit you as to how you've been playing that character. And then embrace that and let that further guide you. But don't choose that to begin with to guide you. Just like I don't ask any of my players when they're making character to roll all these traits and attributes. You know, they don't have to choose anything. Just kind of role play it out and let's kind of see how that goes if they want. If they want to, itemize bullet point those, that's fine. But the alignment, I don't put strong emphasis on. It's certainly not early on. Now, the function of alignment, though, in D&D is interesting unto itself, I think, because beyond being a guide for the players and the GM as to how that character should be played, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the other screen. how that
Mhm.
character should be played, what function does it really serve, right? If it's guiding me to role play, great, it's guiding me for role play. Beyond that, what purpose does it really serve? Now, for some characters, though, a paladin, for example, at least in first edition, they have to be lawful good.
Right.
And if they deviate from that continuously or to too large of an extent, they can lose that class. They can be, in essence, penalized by not being that really good guy. But for most, it doesn't, I think except for them, the only one that's required, I think, is a druid, which is a true neutral. Other than that, what difference does it make?
Hmm.
What difference does it make? All right, but to your point of alignment, since you said alignment systems versus our real morals or real moral formation, so as I'm bringing up the little table or description of these alignments in D&D, did you want to expand on that for me to help me understand what you mean by our alignment systems in the game versus our real moral formations?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, in D&D, we don't really talk about an objective morality or a right and wrong per se. We don't really define that, but we do have alignment, right? And I think the lawful and the chaotic and the neutral portions of that kind of help. People, many people these days, they have kind of a subjective morality or a subjective view of what is right, what is wrong, and that probably, I'm guessing, plays into their concepts of what is good. Evil might be more defined for us. But what does it mean to be good? But the lawful and the chaotic aspects, I'm intuitively thinking it kind of guides that more. So what does that mean for morality in Dungeons and Dragons? I don't know. You know, I mean, we
Okay.
hear a lot. This is good. This is bad, but it's not really defined.
All right, so I want to share with you the Dungeon Master's Guide from first edition. I also have it on a video stream. Instead of looking at you and I, we're looking at the book here on the video stream. And you should be able to see that.
Hmm.
Okay, so,
Coming.
okay, it's coming. You got it?
Yeah, I can't read it. It's so tiny. But
Okay. Well, if you click on it, it'll make it full screen for you at least.
there we
And
go.
then of
Let's
course,
see if
I
I
can
can.
zoom in a little bit here for you too.
Yeah, I can't
Let me
zoom.
close
Oh, there we
this.
go. Alignment. Okay, what am I looking at? Just the different alignments.
Yeah,
What they
yeah,
mean.
since we're talking about it, I'm trying
Mhm.
to get Adobe Acrobat to play nice here. So major divisions, once my computer, okay. So law and chaos, right? And that's what we talked about. There's lawful, there's chaotic, and then there's neutral.
Right.
So those are your three primaries. And and I think I'll find here in a minute for you. There's a graphical image to represent this. But so good and evil basically stated the tenets of good and the tenets of good are human rights, or in the case of D&D, creature rights, right? Each creature is entitled. I'm reading over here. Each creature is entitled to life, relative freedom, and the prospect of happiness. Cruelty and suffering are undesirable. Evil, on the other hand, does not have concern or does not concern itself with rights or happiness, or the pursuit is indeterminate. So then it gives you a description of each individual. So you said earlier when you were a child, you're adolescent, you wanted to play lawful good because that's who you thought you were.
Right.
Okay, so creatures of lawful good alignment view the cosmos with varying degrees of lawfulness or desire for good. They're convinced that order and law are absolutely necessary to assure good, and that good is best defined by whatever brings the most benefit to the greater number of decent thinking creatures and the least woe to the rest. Okay, now your DM then, who's your age, said, "No, Steve, I think Steve's more chaotic good." So
Hmm.
chaotic good is an individual. To chaotic good, individual freedom and independence are the important of life and happiness. The ethos view this. View this freedom as the only means by which creatures can achieve true satisfaction and happiness. Law, order, social reforms, and anything else which tends to restrict or abridge individual freedoms is wrong and each individual is capable of achieving self-realization and prosperity through himself, herself, or itself. So you start reading through these, and you're 12 years old, 15 years old. This is quickly getting a little deep,
Pretty
and
deep.
and
Yeah.
it is kind of a little blurry sometimes, a little grayish between some of these as well. Further
Mhm.
supporting, what I said earlier, I don't ask my players to choose an alignment from the get-go. If they so desire, especially for an experienced player, that's fine. But I don't expect that because it's not, sometimes it's very obvious, the general behavior they want to play the character. Other times it's as clear as mud, right? It's very hard to get a real firm handle on that. So I'm going to scroll down here to the end. I think in the appendices it has a graphical image, so to speak. I forget what this type of line diagram is called, but I'm sure they have a name for it. I'm just waiting.
Have you found when you've allowed players to just play and the alignment emerges, has that alignment been different at different times with that same player when they've allowed it to
So,
emerge like
so
that?
the only specific one that comes to mind most immediately is on Tuesday nights. I have a character named Rustin, who is a dwarven fighter, and the character is pretty well defined in terms of how the character behaves, his personality, and so on. And every so often, he might do something like, okay, what alignment are you again? Because this sounds a little contrary to, in essence, what you have played your character so far. And I was like, yeah,
Hmm.
I don't think that character would do that. And sometimes I kind of have to like intercede and remind them of these things. But
Push
again,
back on.
yeah, so it just kind of helps, I guess, it's a guidance more than anything. Um,
Right.
but so what happens if the player or the character deviates, right, from their chosen alignment or the alignment that's kind of been defined over time by means of their own actions and behaviors? What happens if all of a sudden they deviate in that moment? Is it a good character, like a good person making a bad choice, or a bad person making a
Right.
good choice? Does that mean that they have inherently changed that character, or is this just an isolated moment? You know, and again, I still raise the question: what impact does that have on the game?
Hmm. Right. Well, on the game, yeah. Who knows? It's just part of the role playing. Isn't there something in either the Dungeon Master's Guide or the Player's Handbook where if you are consistently deviating from your alignment, there's a penalty? You lose
I
some
think there
experience
is.
points,
Yeah, I
something
think
like
there
that.
is. Again, I know it's most notable for the paladin because they're required to be lawful good, and if they deviate from that, they'll lose their paladin hood, paladin ship. However that be coined. Hang on, I'm trying to.
You touched on some pretty deep philosophy though that's relevant for all of us. If I do something morally wrong, am I a good person who slipped up? Or does that action reveal a deeper character flaw within me? Does it define me, or is it just a moment, a bad choice? Right?
Great graphical
That
image
that
there. Yeah, okay.
oh yeah, no, there's a ton of great graphical images in these books. That's why I loved it as a kid. But it's that philosophical component that captured my imagination as well when I was young, because it really, I mean, for me, I don't know for others, for me, as an adolescent, as I'm developing my brain and moving from into more abstract thought, the game really, really stretched that and developed that for me.
All right, I'm
That's
turning
healthy.
our video feed back to you and I, but I'm gonna see if I can pull up the player's handbook and take a look at that. See if I can find that image I'm thinking about.
Mm.
Hang on, player.
There was a time when I could find these things easily. I just knew where it
Yeah, and
was.
I'll tell you, you talked about we at the onset we brushed upon technology, and it's one of the great things about having a searchable PDF, right? I can just type in and search for the word alignment versus having to thumb
Oh, that's
through,
so cool. Yeah.
150 pages trying to find it if I'm
Thumb
not
through it
familiar
back in the
enough with
day.
it. But and I'm
Yeah.
pretty familiar with the player's handbook. I need to be more familiar with the DMG, but where and you've heard me on Friday nights. Oh, you're looking for your shopping list, your gear. I say, yeah, that's on page 35. Start there. It's somewhere around page 35, right? So
Right.
I know some of that stuff, but since I don't use alignment very much, or I don't put a lot of emphasis on it, I don't really know that quite as well in terms of where to find it, but give me a second here for the Player's Handbook to pop up. All right, so let me look at time. How are we doing on time, Steve? On record time, that is. Yeah, we're at 50 minutes. Okay. All right, so then let me take a minute here, see if I can pull this up, and because this will tie up some loose ends here for us, and we will wrap up this video, and we can continue chatting if we so desire, and make a second one, a continuation or part 2. All right, Player's Handbook, here we go. All right, appendices. Between Discord, not so much Discord, but the video recording software, it sucks down resources. Here we go. Character alignment graph. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Okay, so I'm going to share that back with our video for YouTube. Let me throw that back on there for them. There we go. Okay. Let me close this. There we go. It's slow. We'll zoom in here a little bit too. So this is the character alignment graph. This is what I was thinking of when I was mentioning that. I'll make that bigger one more time. Hopefully it won't be too big. There we go. Okay. So as you see, right, and you see, the words in the corners, right? Demonic, diabolic, saintly, and beatific. So lawful good, if you go all the way to the extreme, and this is the top left there, that is your lawful good. That is saintly. And obviously the complete opposite of that, the bottom right corner, is demonic. That's satanic, if you will. And that's your chaotic evil, where life is not important, life is not valued. It's all about me, and down with all good. We don't need order. We don't need anything. Every man for himself kind of mentality. And we read that here a minute ago. But so this, I think, can help some people, some players, kind of get a sense of what alignment really means in the game, contrasting or overlapping with reality, right? Because we're familiar with the words saintly, beatific, diabolic, and demonic, right? Or most of us are. We can easily look that up. If you're not familiar with those terms, you can break out a dictionary and you can look that up. But what does that really translate to in the game? Right, so we know what it means in life. What does it mean in the game? And here we have a nice graphical representation of that to kind of help people understand that and guide them into their alignment selection, or how they've been playing the character, how their behavior or the character's behavior, what it really falls into here. You've seen that before, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is this is in the first edition AD&D Player's Handbook, page 119 of the book. So if you have that, you can look it up. If you don't, you can find a PDF for it. If you have the 5th edition, I'm sure that's in there too. I'm not going to take the time to find it now, but I'm sure something like this is in there as well. I believe 5.5, or 6th edition, or 2024 5th edition, I think they've done away with alignment. I think they did either that, or 2014 5th edition did away with it, and now they're bringing it back, something to that effect. I don't know. I don't really do 5e. So
Interesting. Yeah.
All right, let me shut that down.
AD&D was fine, If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, okay, so that's a whole other conversation. We won't get into that here, but in short, each edition. See, when I was, again, the age we're talking about, right, in adolescent, teens-ish, early teens, and I was playing 1st edition, and then 2nd edition came out. Okay, I didn't really know what that meant. I thought it was like a textbook, and this is like the revised edition. Not that it was like a whole new game. I thought it was just a revision, an update, if you will, right? And 3rd edition was an update, a reprinting, if you will, right? Like a textbook or even a novel that they reprinted. They made a mistake here or there. They kind of revised it, tweaked it a little bit. But over 50 years of this game, and having had many discussions about it, playing it, and even discussing on this specific topic of the different editions, each edition is its own distinct game.
Interesting.
It really is. Some are closer to each other than others. Because think about it. Think about what you know as 1st edition, and think about 5th edition. If it's really just a slight revision and it's really an addition, an update, that's a hell of a deviation from first to fifth.
Hmm.
Those games are nothing like each other. They are, to a degree, they're both combat centric fantasy role playing games, often in a medieval setting. And again, even in fifth edition, the bulk of the player's handbook talks about, and the DMG talks about combat, character creation, combat. So it's still a combat centric game, but the games themselves are completely different games, and how they're played now with this new generation of players, the player pool, they'll say, is vastly different than what it was when we were 15. And
Mm.
it doesn't matter if the 15-year-old or today the person's 15 or today the player's 40. If all they know is 5th edition, that's all they know. So
That's what they
that
know.
is your player pool. They don't know anything else. They just know that
Mm.
that is D&D, right? And that player pool is very different than the player pool we had when we were kids,
Yeah.
when we
Yeah.
only had 1st edition or maybe 2nd. Okay, depending. Well, I'm speaking for you and I, right? Maybe those who are a couple years younger, maybe they started with 2nd or 3rd or something, right? But they're very different games. If you go back and look at them and break them all down, yeah, it's a progression, but they are different games. Because if they were the same game, they'd be interchangeable, right? And they're not.
Right.
They're
Right.
not. There are some things that just will not translate from 5 to 1 or 1 to 5.
Mm.
It just doesn't happen. Case in point to that, and we're going to close on this. 'Cause I don't want to go too long.
Okay.
Um, Friday night, we have a young lady who plays with us. Um, oh shit, hang on. Okay. Um, Her father had reached out to me and said, "Hey, she created a character, a 5th edition character she'd like to play." I said, "Oh yeah, what'd she create?" And he told me, and I don't remember what it is. I'm not going to look it up. But I was like, "Yeah, that doesn't exist in 1st edition. I can't even translate that to 1st edition.
Right.
It's just not possible. I'll sit down with her. We'll
Mm.
make a character, but yeah, what she created is not going to work. It just doesn't
Mm.
translate. Like, and think about any language in the world, right? Some things translate beautifully, some things just don't translate, especially expressions and phrases and stuff. Some things get lost in translation. That's why we have that phrase, lost in translation. So, all right, Steve, I'm going
Yeah.
to give you
Yep.
going to give you the last word here. You take as long as you need, but you have the last word on our discussion here on I don't even mean that theory, but philosophy here of role playing in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. I mean, philosophy, that's a strong word. That means I've really thought about it and I know how to articulate it. And as we've discovered over the last hour, no, I really don't. Um, but a lot of this about getting to know yourself. They're thoughts that I've had and kind of spitballed some ideas and some questions, and this helps to kind of flesh it out. And I'm not going to be offended if someone disagrees with me or doesn't see it that way. But over time, I think especially when you're young, again, can I articulate it well? I think intuitively you certainly can. It doesn't mean you will. You certainly can learn a lot about yourself and a lot about exploring who you are and the choices you make and everything else. And I'm watching that happen on Friday. I'm watching it happen live before my eyes as we have some young ones that are just learning even how to make better choices, even how to think ahead. Gosh, for some of the adults as well. We had two PPKs before we finally started getting into a groove, and I'm like, maybe we shouldn't just rush in with, maybe we need to strategize and plan a little bit and think some things through. And I'm not exactly sure how, but I think some of that translates into life. I know I'm not really talking about philosophy, but I know this is a whole other conversation in terms of leadership. When I DM'd, how to set boundaries, how to organize, how to plan, and do different things. Even my vocabulary expanded because of Dungeons and Dragons. So all of those things were very, very valuable, and they can help you. Now, in terms of philosophy approaching the game, I'm just getting back into it. So I have some thoughts and ideas, not really a working philosophy. But this is where alignment, I think, does help me kind of get a handle on the character that I want to play and how I want to play a certain class and how to loosely think of a backstory. I think I came up with a more detailed backstory for one character. You warned me, came up with a detailed backstory. I'm like, oh, I love this character. Next thing I know, he's dead. So now part of my philosophy is maybe don't get too attached. I mean, I worked on it so hard that when I died, another player was like, sorry, bro, that was a cool character. I'm like, yeah, he was. He was a cool character. Now he's dead. You know. Um, so, you know, that's not really a concrete philosophy, but it's becoming that way, where through alignment, you're starting to develop the character, define the character, maybe have a bit of a backstory or those other characteristics that you talked about that make it fun. I never thought about that before. What would it be like to have a character that has a drinking problem or is an alcoholic and he just drinks too much at the end and the next thing you know he's starting fights and everything else. That would just be kind of fun. It's not who I am. It's something I would never ever do. But if I were 13, I might learn something if I start a bar fight and it's like you just took a knife to the gut and you're down to one hit point. Oh gee, maybe drinking to excess has consequences. Um, so yeah, shaping the character, the backstory, but don't get in so much detail that your true self gets fused with that character and you break down crying when they die, right? Um, have a plan. Part of the philosophy everybody always knows. We learn the hard way. Don't split the party. Our team right now is not good at this. Before we go into combat, maybe take some time to develop a plan and have a strategy for going in there versus just we just kind of go in right now, swords drawn and lie luck. It's a miracle and luck of the dice that we're all still alive, but our party's still alive. So, is there a philosophy in all that? No, it's just kind of stream of consciousness rambling. Perhaps after a few more months of playing, perhaps it'll settle down into a philosophy and an approach to developing a character and playing. But that's what I have right now.
Okay. All right, very good, Steve. I'm going to stop our video here. You and I will chat
Cool.
here for another minute or two, but I want to stop our video
All
for the
right.
purposes of YouTube.
Thanks for having me.
So for anyone, the 5 people who might actually watch this, we appreciate it. Like, comment,
I'm going to share it.
subscribe.
It might increase to six.
So it might. Yeah, well, because you'll watch it. So we'll get up to 6. So like, comment, subscribe. We appreciate it, and we're more than happy to engage in any comments that people put in. But until next time, you guys have a good night.
All right. Thank you.